Bernstein Show. Here's Ed.
Hi everyone. Today my special guest is pop icon Nick Carter of the Backstreet Boys. From global superstardom to sold-out tours, including their hugely successful residency at the Sphere, Nick keeps evolving as an artist and a performer. Hi Nick, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, you walked in the door and I told you right away, you've lived the life of three people.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, you starting so young in a career and then everything that goes with it.
Yeah.
Can you just give me a quick summary of how you got into the Backstreet Boys and how you got into music?
Yeah. So, I mean, I can give a little history of where I came from, where I moved to, and how it kind of evolved in the career. So basically, when I was about 6 years old, I moved down to Tampa, Florida, from upstate New York. Jamestown was where I was born. So started as a New Yorker and then moved down to Tampa right around that age. Um, and then between like the ages of 6 and I'd say basically 11, right before I met the Backstreet Boys, I would just go to school, elementary school, normal kid, just like everybody else. And, I just basically started being kind of inspired by music at a young age.
Did your parents have
Yeah,
any?
so music was always around. My parents had this whole stack of just vinyls, and I would go through those vinyls, and I remember being kind of fascinated by just the pictures, because that's what it was like back in the day with vinyls, and being like, and then the picture would then lead you to the music, and so then I literally would put on my mother and father's vinyls and listen to all these records, and so music was always on in the house. And
What were your parents into? What
a
albums were?
lot, a lot of rock, a lot of classic rock, but it was a little bit of everything. I mean, yeah, I remember seeing Creedence Clearwater in there. I remember seeing a lot of Journey. Journey was a big band of our families. I mean, Earth, Wind and Fire. I mean, everything. Very eclectic music. And so, anyways, that music was constantly on in the house, and I was listening to it and being inspired. And then I started doing. My parents noticed that I was inspired by it, and so my mother and father put me in music lessons. But it was classically trained music lessons. I remember sitting with a old-fashioned lady behind a piano, and I mean would just drill me, when it came to being classically trained vocally. And I remember that, and then that evolved into dance lessons and dance classes, and then I started doing because in Orlando, which was only an hour away from Tampa, was a very active movie, television
Oh yeah,
movie
for
kind
sure.
of market. They would call it like the second Hollywood. So I started doing acting, and then I would do dance competitions, and so I was constantly always driving around and doing stuff. And then eventually, probably around 10 years old, I started getting better and better, and that's when I auditioned for the Backstreet Boys at around 12. I think it was 12 actually. And
But that was at the same time you auditioned for the
Mickey
Mickey
Mouse Club.
Mouse Club
Yep.
at Disney?
Yeah, so the Mickey Mouse Club also, it was really crazy because I was constantly doing auditions and really never would get called for anything.
But did you enjoy the whole process, or as a young boy, were you kind of like annoyed by it?
No, I mean, I enjoyed it. It was sort of an escape, in my household, and but it was every time I was on stage, every time I was performing, every time I was singing, learning a new song, and it was inspiring. It was really a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay. So now you have a choice to make. You have an opportunity to be in the Mickey Mouse Club, and you had a contract. I mean, you had a.
Yeah.
I read it was like they were offering you a $50,000
Yeah.
contract. I mean, here you had no experience basically, right? And you're getting a contract from Disney, and you have to make this decision: do I do this, or do I join this band that nobody really? That's just forming, right? I mean, they're just in the infancy and of developing. That's got to be a tough decision to make.
Yeah, it was a very tough decision because at the time, we had 5 kids in our family, and, my mother and father were working multiple jobs at the time, and, it was a struggle in our household, just to pay the bills, and so when you get this contract, in front of you, it's like, "Oh my god, this is like, immediate gratification,"
Yeah.
and at the time, I was always wanting to I felt like money was gonna be the solution to, my family and everything, which turned out it was not. But, yeah, everything that I made, I would just basically give to them, and so I was given an opportunity to choose between the 2, and this contract, $50,000 on the table, which definitely could have helped our family at the time, and then I chose the Backstreet Boys at it, and, that took a little bit longer to get to the place, where we started to do well, but yeah, it was crazy.
But you also, at the same time, were doing some solo work as well, weren't you? Even at that age.
Well, so at that age, I mean, it was all solo. So basically, when I auditioned for the Backstreet Boys, you came in as a solo artist and you could be a part of a group. And so, I was just one of the guys, and yeah, it there was really I was so young at the age of 12 that I didn't even know where my life was gonna take me. All I knew was at the time that I enjoyed it. I loved performing. Every time I was on stage, it made me happy.
Yeah. Now you used a word earlier, when you talking about when you were going to elementary school, had a normal education. That kind of changes once you start performing and become, successful and famous, right? I mean, then it goes into tutors and homeschooling and stuff like that,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. No, I actually had to get, taken out of school, because really when the Backstreet Boys when we started to, I'd say, tour before we had a record label, we got really busy. There was a lot of recording, there was a lot of touring, there was a lot of promotion, before we even got the record label, deal, and so I was taken out of school and put into private tutoring at that time. So I'd say that was probably around like between 13 and 17 years old, 18 years old. And but yeah, I didn't get the same life, I'd say, that
Experience,
a
right?
lot
Yeah.
of other kids got, which I kind of sometimes I regret it, and then other times I'm like, well, this was just the path that was kind of chosen for me, and I accept it. But I didn't have, high school, didn't have, graduations, didn't have, um, proms or, playing organized sports, none of that stuff. So I kind of, I'd say my childhood was pretty much all work.
So would you recommend that for your kids?
Absolutely. I mean, no, no,
No.
not at all. I think that's the reason why, in Las Vegas, I've been here for, since 2017, and basically, my family started here in Las Vegas. Both my daughters were born here. My son, he was just barely a year old when we moved here as well. And I've definitely gone on tours. I've done things, and as I've seen them grow up, like get a little bit older and older, my whole thing is that look, school first, education, normal life, sports. Just let them be kids because I didn't have that, at all. And it was kind of taken away from me a little bit. And so I get that opportunity to give them the life that I didn't necessarily have. And that's what Las Vegas has pretty much given me and my family. And I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, and you've given Las Vegas a lot as well. We'll get to that in a little bit later. When did it become apparent to you that you were gonna have this stardom as a young man?
I mean, even still to this day don't take anything for granted. I'm very grateful for what I'm doing. So my point is that I've never really seen we have had success. We have had great monumental moments and things that you could accolades that you could say, "Oh, wow, that's an incredible career," or whatever. But I don't ever look at myself that way. I'm the same guy that drives a pickup truck. My pickup truck. I
Did?
just drive the same truck, wherever I go, and I've always looked at myself that way, and wanted to be normal, even though I was thrust into this entertainment industry. I just wanted to be a normal kid. I just wanted to, So to answer the question, I don't even know if I can answer it because we have had great moments like Sphere, and but I live in the moment, and every single day is a blessing.
You mentioned the sphere. Spoke a few weeks ago to one of the CEOs of one of the hotels here in town, who said to me that the Backstreet Boys saved Las Vegas this summer. That's how successful your residency at the Sphere was over the summer at a time when tourism was, on a decline. We had a problem over the summer; it was down. But you brought players, the kind of players that the casinos like, into
Yeah.
town. Yeah.
I'd like to say they could call it players, I call it joy.
Okay. Well, it's
I
joy
guess
for
those both
everybody.
could be the same. You're
Yeah,
getting
yeah,
joy out
yeah.
of it. I don't know. Yeah, I heard that, and I was just still blown away by it. I couldn't believe it, and still don't believe it to this day. I'm just like, really? Like, but look, I think I can compare it to if I go back and I know our career, 35 years of being almost 35 years of being in this industry. Um, our music has brought, I'd like to say, has brought a lot of joy to people's lives. When some of our peak, the things that had happened in 2099, 2000, 2001, Millennium specifically, that album, which we are pretty much honoring at Sphere. It was good music, a good time in the world. Um, there was no internet really. People had to go to a show, they had to bring their cameras, their real cameras, and actually live in the moment. And so they kind of get an opportunity to do that. And so whether we say, hey, put on white outfits, come outside, have a great time at this show, and then we see, of course, I see like the pictures of people and the videos of people leaving and singing our songs on the way out. And I'm like, well, you know what? At least we're giving back and doing a little something good, and especially for the community that I love so much.
How is performing at the Sphere different than any other place that you've performed?
Sphere is out of this world, obviously. That's the only way you can explain it. The From our perspective, when we're on the stage looking out, every now and then I catch a glimpse, on my side eye, and I see what's going on behind us. But most of the time, we don't really see it. So all we get is that like on stage normal performance experience from us. But then we get the responses back, and it's just been like incredible. So basically, it's hard for me. I have to ask somebody else, what they thought of the show. And, from what we're hearing, it's just, sensory overload, music, everything is just, it is the best venue in the entire world. And I'll never forget when before we even got the offer, um, I was basically in between tours with Backstreet Boys, just back home, just doing my normal stuff with my children and everything. And I would drive my kids to school, and I would drive by this venue, and I would look up and I'd be like, no way, there's no way I'd ever play that place. I mean, even though I live here, I'm like, there's no way, and so that's just how I look at things. I'm always just like, hey, if an opportunity comes, I'm grateful for it.
And open. It Had you been to the Sphere before you, were there? Were you there as a, as a customer?
Yeah, actually, we did. Before we even got the offer, I went and saw this show called Postcard Earth,
Mhm.
and I just remember just feeling like a ride, almost like a like a Universal Studios kind of ride, but 1,000 times better than what that was when I was younger. And and again, saying to myself, I just went with my friends and family, and saying to myself, gosh, that you know I just this is an incredible venue. If we ever were to play this, I would be it would be incredible. But I didn't know what we could. I know we have had a great catalog of music. I know that we have a very great fan base. Um, and I think that that's also another thing that's probably great about Las Vegas, Sphere, and Backstreet Boys is that we have a worldwide fan base. We were just talking about, Argentina or,
Right.
you know, South America or Asia or Europe or whatever. I mean, I talk to you all the time. I'm like, hey, I'm going out of town.
Yeah.
I'll be back in like 2 weeks because I got to go somewhere else. And but we can bring those people here.
Look, I have such empathy for you when you talk to me about these things because I know how difficult it is for you to leave and go on tour, and you have to wrestle with your three children at home, your wife, and having what you consider the normal life at the same time, and that balance is really, really difficult. And some of it I find is outside of your control because as much as you want to have that normal life and that be under the radar and a lot in your personal life, you know, i- people don't let you do that.
Right.
And you've had a lot of you know difficulty in your life, and I wanted to ask you, particularly with grief. You've had a lot of I've had some grief too, and I just wanted to know how you personally would deal with grief.
It's very hard to deal with grief in the spotlight
Yeah.
because you don't really get a chance to slow down necessarily, especially if you have an active career and you're constantly going. I like this, it's like the tears of a clown kind of situation, where you have to put a smile on your face, but you're hurting on the inside. And that sort of like that old saying, the show must go on in the entertainment industry was told to us at a very young age. But I'm human just like everybody else. I bleed, I breathe, I cry and all those things. And so sometimes grief, yeah, I've had it. I mean, I've lost 3 siblings, to
Difficult.
addictions.
Yeah.
And
And had it personal experience yourself with it.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I definitely have gone through it myself, and always a work in progress. Constantly trying to just take care of myself. Because if I don't take care of myself, then that trickles down to my children as well. Um, and so those are the things that I think of constantly. Is being strong for my family and my children, so that I can make sure that they don't fall into that later in their lives, you know what I mean? So it's hard, it definitely is, you have to definitely put on a smile and work through it in the ways that you can, if that's, therapy or all the other things. But the entertainment business, it can sometimes not be kind, you know,
Yeah.
and that's just the way that it is.
It must be helpful though to have a residency here in Las Vegas. At least those times you don't have to be touring.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, um again, the convenience of me being able to drive 15 minutes, to
To work.
to work essentially is a blessing. And so happy for that because, I get to come home and just be dad, take my son to baseball,
Right.
take my kids to school, um, do things with them. A lot of artists necessarily can't do that. Other than like maybe country artists, sometimes they'll be like the weekend warrior kind of, they'll go for like, 3 days at a time so that they can get back home and be with their families. I've been given that blessing here. And I love it. I mean, listen, Las Vegas has definitely been a place that has shown me so much love. The community on the outside, I have learned so much about. There are incredible families out here, incredible people outside of the strip. Um, and they're normal. And there's times when, I just want to, whatever, put on a baseball cap you know, and just go out in a baseball field with my son and just hang out with the parents and the fathers and stuff like that. I've become great friends through baseball with actually he's a co-coach of mine on one of my teams. His name is Jesse Churchill, and he's a chief master sergeant up at Nellis. And so I'm actually, I don't know if I have announced this or about it, but I'm getting ready to do a performance at Nellis,
This would be a solo
a
perform.
solo show at Nellis, to honor the military. We're doing it through a foundation. And it's going to be really, really awesome because I've learned so much about Nellis, and that's just another part of this community. There's so many
Yeah,
great things here.
yeah, and Nellis is, look, it's acknowledged around the world as being a, a very special place.
Yeah.
You talked about baseball. This has been an exciting year for the Little League,
Yeah.
right? You have a son who I understand is a little superstar in of himself in baseball.
He's my superstar. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't matter if we didn't choose baseball. I didn't choose baseball for him to be an MLB star necessarily. What I wanted was the life lessons that baseball could teach him, so that when he gets older, that he can essentially have like a normal life. You know what I mean? It's going to be hard, because I am from the Backstreet Boys, and I definitely have been in this industry at a young age. So it's my duty and my job to help, to give him opportunities, and also too, it's what I love about baseball is that the coaches help me coach my son, essentially help me father my son in a lot of ways. So if I'm away, and I need somebody to drive him to baseball, I'll call up, the fathers and the family and say, hey, can you get there? And that's, carpooling, all that stuff. So, but it's been wonderful, because even outside your house, I'll never forget when he was 2 years old, maybe three actually. And I started throwing baseball to him out in that little park out there. And it was just something I always wanted him to have that he could take with him when he's older. And it's a father-son bonding experience, and I love it.
Yeah. One of the lessons that we as boys, at least, learn in baseball is how to deal with the bad days, the bad at bats, the errors, the mess ups that you have, and and how not to be too hard on yourself for some of those because they're all really learning opportunities.
Did you ever play?
I did Little League.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah. So exactly. So you know exactly what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. It's you fail more than you succeed in baseball, and to accept that failure and to know that, hey, that is life.
Yeah, look, a good batting average in baseball is like 300, which just means you succeed 3 out of 10 times,
Yeah.
right? A
Exactly.
whole lot more losses than successes.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to ask you about writing, and what do you like to write personal things, personal lyrics? Do you like to, how do you write?
Well, first of all, I mean, I did my last solo record, which flew under the radar, and I was totally fine with that because it was more of a personal um, uh, thing for me. Um, it's called Love, Life, Tragedy, and I'd written 90% of that stuff here in Las Vegas, and I would go record here. It's all those songs. So to answer the question, um, it's very personal. A lot of the stuff that I necessarily could not say, or was feeling, that grief you were talking about,
Right.
I was able to write those into those songs. And then it came out, and I finally released it, and, it did pretty well. But it was more about me, just like, it was almost like a journal. It was like writing it down and just like putting it out, and, you know, so yeah, it definitely is personal.
And it will be there forever,
Yeah.
which is also a great thing. I mean, you talk about under the radar. I mean, but everything else you've done has been over the radar. Backstreet Boys are the best-selling male boy group in the history of the world, right?
I don't know. Is
Like
that true?
130, 140 million albums. I don't even know how they do it anymore. Albums, records, downloads. I mean, it's all so different.
Yeah, it's definitely changed. We went through the era of, you know, CDs were being recorded, and the amount of people that went and scanned those, and, and then we were breaking records, got to whatever 2 million first day or first week or whatever they called it. So yeah, they don't do it anymore, but it's changed.
Were you happy that you did the reality shows that you did?
The
You did 2 of them.
Yeah, so um I've done two of them, one with my wife, and one with with my family. And you sometimes get opportunities, things come your way and you do them and you don't know why you do them or, whatever. Um, but was I happy with them? I don't really regret, that, because I think that it, who I am as a person, I put it out there and, people can say what they want to say and whatever, but um, I think in a lot of ways though, people watched me grow up. A lot of our fans have watched me grow up through this industry, whether it was, from the age of 13 or when people really started discovering us at the age of like 14. I was a teenager, you know, but at the time when, teenagers were buying our records and starting to pay attention to us. And so some of those people actually watched me go through the ups and downs.
Right.
And I've been candid about that, and so I don't necessarily regret it.
So what's in the future? We have about a minute left for you, Nick. I mean, you see yourself, being 70 years old and being a part of the Backstreet Boys?
For me, it's I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. What I would like in my life is to just be, if my career can keep going on, if I can still be able to entertain people, and those people can, get like enjoyment out of it and a little bit of an escapism from the world through our music, through our shows, and I can continue to do that. Um, that's always been my job. That's always been what I love and what I live for, because I live for other people to be happy. That's always been my situation. And so, but if not, and I'm not, and I'm 7 years old or I'm 60, whatever it is, and can't dance anymore, can't tour, whatever. As long as I can be a father that watches my children go to college, and be there for them when they need me, just be there in their lives, to be able to provide for them. Those are the things that I care about the most. Be there for my family.
Thank you, Nick.
Appreciate it.
You can catch us next week on The Ed Bernstein Show.
People, can't you see how your love's affecting our reality?